Warning. This is not a safe space. Leave your bullshit and feelings at the door.
Maybe I'm getting a little old for my age, but is it just me or are kids nowadays just acting like total shits? Let's talk about it.
It's time for the most raw and unfiltered experience on
My
the internet.
dick is hard.
So kick your feet up and grab a cold one.
Like,
you have just
as
entered
erect
the
as it could
man
possibly
cave.
be. All 2.5 inches
And now,
of my cock.
Here they are,
my
mouth.
winners of the self-proclaimed International Greatest Men Alive Award, Brad and Terry.
Hey, thanks for joining us here in the Man Cave. I am Brad.
And I am Terry.
Hey, make sure to check us out online over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. But if you want the full, no bullshit experience and the ability to win all kinds of prizes, you're going to have to subscribe to us over on Patreon. We'll talk about that here in a little bit.
So you asked me to grab the beer today, and I know how much you love this. So I brought you a 12-pack of Bud Light.
I don't want to drink beer this episode. You know, I'm kind of feeling a little fat, a little, I'm a little self-conscious. I think I'm just going to abstain from drinking beer this episode.
You know, I don't drink Bud Light, but when you asked me to pick it up,
Don't say it up like I asked you to pick up Bud Light.
when you asked me to pick up some beer,
Okay, there we go. That sounds better.
there was just such openness that I could not resist when I got there, and just an entire case in the refrigerated section was just all Bud Light.
For like $8.
It was calling my name, so I had to get you something.
Now, I want to make it clear. Look, we make fun of it. We make lighthearted jokes about Bud Light. But, if you're a guy out there, it's like, you know what? Fuck these guys. I drink Bud Light. Look, man, we're just going to have to agree to disagree.
I was in high school
offense.
once, too.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I couldn't afford things either. But for real, if that's your thing, I had a friend a couple years back that we used to go out in Florida, and me and a couple other guys. The one guy drank exclusive IPA. That's
Okay.
all he drank. I love a nice lager, maybe a regular, just an ale, something like that.
Yeah.
And we were we were actually at a whiskey bar, but they had a lot of really good craft beer. So we ordered a couple, local beers, stuff like that. He drank his beer, and after drinking one beer, he just looked at us and was like, I just can't do it, guys. And we're like, what are you talking about? And the waitress came, and she's like, would you like another? And he just went, no, I'll take a Bud Light. We were just like, okay. But to each their own.
Yeah, that's some people's fancy. But speaking of beer, well,
Yeah, speaking of beer.
I don't want to give away too much yet. But at the end of this episode, we're going to announce our next patron raffle.
Yeah.
So we just gave away the UKEG last episode, and at the end of this episode, we're going to announce what the next prize will be. And you'll have a good amount of time to actually become a patron. We're not going to be giving it away this month, or I don't want to say anytime soon. It's coming.
Oh, yeah.
But you'll have time, and we'll announce the date that we're going to give it away and what it is at the end of this episode. So please stick around, because you're not going to want to miss this one. If you thought the UKEG was cool, I think this one's just as cool, if not cooler.
There we go. All right, so I opened up the intro for the show
Yeah.
talking about little turds.
Hitting your kids.
I mean, we can go that route. We can talk about the differences between beating children and spanking kids, but right. So I remember growing up, and I'm sure you probably remember growing up.
There was a little bit of drugs in between growing up and now, so not as much as I would like.
Not remembering as much as you should be remembering. But let me ask you this: would you have ever dreamt of acting out in public with your parents there?
At what age?
Let's go 8 or 9 years old.
I did act out in public.
And what happened?
So I can remember one specific incident where I can't remember the name of the place, but it's like a Dave and Buster's kind of place, right? And I really wanted to go, so my parents took me, and I had, just as your kids do, a tough time wanting to eat my food, right? I was just like, I don't want to eat it. So my parents made the deal with me that we would go to this place as long as I ate something. And I was like, okay. But you're going to notice a common trend with another story I tell about this whole thing a little later, that I will say I'm going to eat something just to get what I want and then not eat it. Right?
Okay.
Unless it's ass. Anyway.
And cheesecake.
Yeah. But we went to this place, and my parents ordered me a hot dog. One hot dog was all I had to eat. I didn't want to eat it, and I just wanted to go play the games.
Yeah.
Right? So you know what they did?
No, they took your ass right out.
They took me out. And I remember being in the car, crying, yelling, and my parents still make fun of me for this to this day. I was crying, I'll eat my hot dog, I'll eat my hot dog, all the way home.
I've never heard this story from you. I can't wait for the next time I'm grilling out, and I'm going to make you hot dogs, and I'm going to make you fucking eat one.
I will eat them. No,
I'm going to make you cry out, I'll eat my hot dog.
Yeah, but I think they handled the situation well.
I think they handled it perfectly, and I want to say that, I mean, like, you might have thrown a fit a little bit, but you did what every parent should do, and it kind of alludes to what I'm going to talk about with disciplining children. But recently I've seen this, like, a rash of kids who have no discipline, and to me it's a huge problem when kids are growing up with no boundaries and no discipline from mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And they just act like shits towards other kids when there's no adult around, and they can bully other kids, and they act like shits out in public even when their parents are right next to them. And like yours removed you from the situation, but some parents they don't want to remove them from the situation.
They just kind of give in.
Yeah, because, and I think in a situation like that, it's hard because your parents want to see you having fun.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason they took you there. So it's hard to walk out on something, but it probably sends the best signal to your kids that, you know, we were going to have all this fun. It was probably the best thing on your mind at that time.
We made a deal, and I broke the deal.
And I bet from there on out you didn't break too many more deals because you took mom and dad pretty fucking serious.
I tried almost the same thing. Not soon after.
Yeah.
And in this situation, I loved getting Happy Meals from McDonald's. Okay? But I really only ever wanted the toy that came in the Happy Meal. So we were about to pass by McDonald's. We were driving in the car, and I was like, Mom, Dad, can we go to McDonald's? And they were like, they knew. They were like, are you hungry or do you just want the toy? And I was like, I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm like, I'm hungry, right? Like,
with the eyes too. You got those little innocent eyes that you just gave me there.
And they were like, okay. And looking back on it, they knew the whole time. And my dad says, he's like, if I buy you this Happy Meal, and it turns out that all you wanted was the toy, I'm going to shove that cheeseburger down your throat.
And by gauging by your previous story, I bet he shoved that motherfucker down your throat.
We go to McDonald's. We get the Happy Meal. We get home. And he sets up the Happy Meal for me to eat. And I was like, I'm not hungry. My dad pulled out this little stool and sat me up against a wall and held this cheeseburger in front of my face. Now, this was not a violent act.
Yeah.
I was not on the verge of choking due to this.
Yeah.
But I don't even want to call it force feeding, but I was forced to eat this cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And after that, we never had any of these issues ever again.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And that's usually somewhat, I think, kid logic, right? They throw the fit to try to get what they want. They get removed from the situation. You're going to try it.
Yeah.
Well, at least one more time to see, was that time that, you know, they drug you out of whatever Chuck E. Cheese, that Dave & Buster's-esque place it was?
Yeah.
Was that a fluke? Or is this, like, really how it's going to be?
Yeah.
So let me try to get a Happy Meal and test the water one last time. Oh, shit. here comes the cheeseburger.
Like this is real life.
Yeah. All right. I guess I ain't trying this shit no more unless I want to get force-fed food all the time. But I think that kind of goes into what I was going to talk about is there's a couple things at play with kids who have no discipline at home. And the first thing is, right, why I think there are issues. Again, personal opinion, but I have 2 kids of my own. The number one thing is parents are lazy with their follow-through. Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing showing that with your parents, if you're not lazy with your follow-through, you can actually change behavior quite quick and easily. But it's that 100% of the time, right? That you have to be doing it. And like I said, I'll be honest. My wife and I, we've been lazy at times, and the reason behind I think why a lot of parents get lazy with their discipline is because being parents, being a mom and being a dad, it's a 24-hour job. There's never a day off.
Yeah.
So you got to be on that discipline every single day, and it's hard because you just like, holy crap, you know what? Today I don't feel like. I love you. I just don't feel like dealing with your shit right now.
I'll be honest. I don't have any kids, but I come over to your place and I see the interaction and I just sit there and I ask myself, man, how is this guy not an alcoholic? It's just like, hats off and kudos to every parent out there that makes a legitimate effort to raise their kids.
Yeah.
Because holy shit, from an outsider's perspective who isn't in the middle of that, I could not imagine myself having to do that. It seems like just an enormous amount of work that I can't even, like, I can try to put myself there, but I can't fathom what it's actually like.
Yeah, the amount of patience that you have to have, but like I said, the amount of discipline to keep your kids on the right path. All right, and like I said, parents have to be disciplined, dishing out the discipline.
Yeah,
you can't slack with it. Right, and like I said, the verdict is still out with mine. Mine still have years to go before they are fully grown and out of my nest. So again, I'm not trying to sit here and be some, kid guru.
Yeah.
Some know-it-all with kids. But I'm telling you, from kids I've seen where I walk around in public, and it's not that they're throwing a fit and their parents are dragging them out of someplace. It's they're throwing the fit at someplace and their parents are just feeding into it. You can't feed into that stuff because it's a snowballed behavior. Once they see once that shark tastes that little bit of blood in the water that you're giving it, they're just going to keep coming back for more every time.
So what would your advice be to a parent that, let's say, has allowed it to get out of control, and let's say someone has recognized the fact that they've been kind of lazy with keeping their child disciplined, and I mean discipline doesn't mean you're striking your kid or anything along those, but a parent that's recognized that they've been lazy in that sense, what would your advice be as another parent to kind of help them to get that started after it's been neglected?
Yeah. All right. So one thing my wife and I used to do, I think it was before we were parents and when our first was really young. Have you ever watched the show Super Nanny?
Yes.
If you want to talk about kids that are completely out of control.
Oh yeah.
And just watch 10 episodes. It won't take you long. I think the show's maybe 30 minutes without, and that's with commercials. So it's not going to take you long to watch a handful of episodes. There are common denominators with the children and the parents.
Yeah.
Right? Usually there's the parents have given up. So for parents that have kids that are completely out of control, one thing that I was going to kind of allude to, I hate to, I'm going to speak a little truth to you. Most of it probably is your fault.
Yeah.
Due to a lack of structure and discipline in the house. So what do you got to do to get them in there? Watch Super Nanny. What does she do? She walks in, she immediately implements structure into the house. And she usually goes with writing down a list of rules for the house that people have to abide by. And we've never went that far. We don't have like we have a sign that kind of says the family rules.
Yeah.
Be kind to one another. And,
Basic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really basic bitch stuff. It's nothing,
Not like a list of chores or anything along those lines.
And it's not really like you could hang this list in anybody's house, right?
Yeah.
But she makes rules that are very much tailored to that family,
right?
And the issues they're doing. But I mean, that's one avenue, is to make some rules, which creates structure. And the other thing that she forces the parents to do, and you'll see when she's forcing the parents to do it, you'll see the behavior changes, is she forces them to discipline her kids in some fashion,
right?
Whether it's a timeout or something like that. She forces them, and she forces them to follow through with it. And then you'll see she leaves for a few days, and that regimen of discipline and following through usually starts slacking,
yeah,
and the kids go right back to the behavior. So it's that regimented discipline of your children that, to me, is really going to get your kids on the right path to success. And like I said, my two still have years until they're fully grown, and hopefully, knock on wood, moving out and spreading their own wings. So, again, not the kid expert, but, because the verdict's still out. By no means are my kids perfect. But, I mean, I see kids all the time, like even kids that are close to us that are just, they're young and they're straight up bullying other kids. And the problem with it is their parents are inadvertently condoning it because they don't discipline them for their actions. And the one thing that I see with their inability to discipline their kids is, and their inability to be able to recognize that their kid's not a perfect fucking angel, is they make up all these excuses of why their kids are like this.
Yeah.
Well, they got this problem or they got that problem. Well, what does that do for a kid when their parents, they've done something wrong, their parents don't discipline them, and then they hear their parents, well, it's because this kid has this going on with them. Turns that kid into a victim immediately.
Right.
So at 6, 7, 8 years old, this kid's already in a victim status.
Yeah.
I'm a victim.
And probably on medication now and things of that nature. Because you blame it on something like ADD. I mean, it doesn't take much now to go to a doctor and say, you have ADD, here's your pill.
Here's the, I've seen kids with ADHD or ADD, whatever you call it, whatever one you're going to, I don't want to say what you call it, because ADD and ADHD are legitimate diagnoses, but ADHD doesn't have to mean that your kid's a dickhead to other kids.
Right.
It just means a lot of times your kid's overly hyper and they can't sit down, which, and for a lot of parents, I hate to tell, again, I'm not a doctor, but if you walked into any first grade classroom, you couldn't pick out the ADHD kids from all the other kids.
Right.
Because they're all fucking little hyper turds that have just, running all around the place because they're little balls of energy at that age.
Yeah.
You're just trying to survive through the day as the teacher. I can't imagine having 25 kids and one teacher, and you're trying to corral these, it's herding cats at that point. But yeah, to kind of ring it back, round it back out and get it in one fail swoop of an answer to the disciplining your kids and stuff like that. Parents have to stick with the plan. My kids aren't perfect, but I've had nothing but raving reviews from other parents, from their teachers, about how they act towards other kids and being kind to other kids. And that's, to me, that's a kind of a byproduct, because that's when we're in our house, we talk about things like that. We don't keep that stuff locked up in a secret of how we treat one another, with respect. And, my oldest has a kid in his class that has, I don't want to say it's severe autism, but it's enough that it really affects the kid's life.
Yeah.
And he's in middle school, man. Those are rough years to be a kid that's different.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that kid and, how it must be for him to be different, but that we're all kind of different, and that we should treat him, just like we would, have respect for any other kid. And, I get told by it's a very humbling experience to go into the school and be told by the teacher that this kid has picked to sit next to my kid because my kid helps him with his schoolwork and the way he treats them. All the kids that are around him treat him really nice. And I mean, if I was a parent of a kid like that, I would worry sending my kid to a public school who has autism and him not getting picked on constantly. Nowadays, kids pick on each other relentlessly to the point where kids fucking kill themselves over this shit.
Yeah.
Like it's serious stuff to worry about. Like I mean, as a parent of a middle schooler, I worry about shit like that. But you know, it's humbling to hear things like that. But again, we don't keep that a secret in our house of how we treat other human beings, regardless of how they are, and we have discipline in our house.
Yeah.
You know, my kids don't act right. You best believe you're going to be grounded, things taken away, stuff like that. There's got to be some kind of boundaries, or your kids are going to go buck wild. There's a bunch of influences out there for your kids that aren't you. You know, how many hours a day do your kids sit at school?
So we're gonna make like a dick and wrap it up here, but I have one question for you on this topic before we move on.
Okay.
What do you think about hitting your kids?
Ooh.
Because nowadays, you hit a kid just calls the police on you.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because how do I feel about hitting kids? So growing up, I definitely got my ass beat.
Yeah.
And I do not hold that against my parents at all. Like I'm not the one that's like, you know, I'm so traumatized that my dad whipped my ass when I was a big fuck up, and now I don't touch my kids. I will say for my youngest, he never really gets out of line to the point where I'd ever really think of, you know, I have other tactics that I can use. But my oldest, the most devastating thing that I could ever do to him to punish him is spank him.
Yeah.
And oh boy, does he hate it. But he hates it so bad that just the thought that I'm about to whoop that ass is enough for him to freak out and stop doing whatever the hell it is he's doing. So I think every parent knows that there is a difference between physically beating your child and spanking your child.
Right.
There is a and you don't even want to say there's a thin line, because it's night and day.
Yeah.
You know, and your kid's going to know that. I hope your kid knows the difference between getting a pop on the ass, because they're probably wearing pants and underwear and all this other stuff in between, you know, and it's an open hand pop of the ass versus a closed fist, you know, hit.
Right.
So I am absolutely for spanking if it gets to that. I would say parents usually, you have so many other psychological tools to fuck with your kids' minds over it, between grounding, the taking away of phones, and even sometimes I'll just look at if he's my oldest is in public, and you know, at that teenage year where you're around friends and you're trying to be cool.
Yeah.
Man, the best line that I have is I'll just get really close to him and I'll lean in and I'll whisper in his ear, "I'm not afraid to embarrass you in front of all of your friends." Because I don't get embarrassed anymore. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And he just turns and looks at me like, "You wouldn't dare." And then I turn and I look at him and I give him like big wide eyes like, "Fucking try me." Stops him in his tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, I have not had to go that far with him in so long, just because I have so many other tools to use, and two, he deathly hates that. So I can just use that fear of it as a weapon against him to get him to stop doing whatever he's doing.
Right. But anyway, let's move on. And as we talked about in the beginning, we were going to announce the next giveaway that we're going to do. And this one's pretty cool, right? So the last thing we gave away was the UK 64-ounce growler, and that went to Martin. Congratulations again. But our next prize, we're going to give it away on the episode that we're going to release on March 16th. And we've picked that day because that's the Saturday before March Madness starts. So that episode, we're gonna give away this prize. We're gonna go over our March Madness brackets, and we're gonna have a real good time. But in the spirit of March Madness, we're going to give one lucky patron a 3-month subscription to the Beer of the Month Club. Nice. That's a victory fart right there. But it's pretty awesome, because you hear Beer of the Month and you think, oh, I'm going to get a beer every month. But the one that we found, because there's multiple different clubs for this kind of thing, the one that we found is a little different. So here it is, just kind of in a nutshell what's going to happen. Each month for 3 months, you'll be delivered 12 full-size bottles of hard-to-find, premium-quality craft beers from independent breweries from across the country, featuring 2 different breweries every month and 2 different beers from each brewery. So that's 4 varieties of unique craft beer in every shipment, because you're going to get 3 bottles of each, with guaranteed award winners every month, and every beer comes with a guarantee that you'll absolutely love it. And the 3-month subscription is a $120 value.
Nice.
So you're going to get a lot of cool stuff. And this has a huge upside in that you're going to get a ton of cool beers delivered to you. But the downside is you're probably not going to be able to find these beers again.
No, man. Once you get that really good one, you drink it, you're like, shit, I only have 2 more of these things left.
Yeah, so
it's going to be so hard to get.
Yeah, but I'm real excited for this one. I can't wait to hype it up, and I can't wait to actually give it to somebody, because whoever gets it, I would love to hear your thoughts on all the beers you get, because it's going to be something that we have never tried and probably will never try. So it'd be real cool to hear about the beers that you're getting from this once we actually give it away.
Yeah, and there'll be a patron, so it should be an easy day to get in contact with us and just give us your feedback on all the different beers you drink, and we can feature that on the show towards the end of your beer reviews on these exclusive beers that you're
I'd
getting.
love to do that, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, again, don't forget to follow us over on Facebook, the official Man Cave Podcast, over on Twitter at the Man Cave 14, and on Instagram at the Man Cave Podcast. Also, catch us over on YouTube. But again, if you want that full no bullshit, no safe spaces experience, check us out and subscribe to us over on Patreon. Again, for only $1 up until the end of this year, you're going to end up being able to get the man card, and also you're going to be entered in to win, like Terry just talked about, the Beer of the Month Club valued at $120. For $5 a month, you're going to get all that stuff and also be entered in to win the prizes and get exclusive access to special podcasts that we do called After the Show, getting a piece of ass on the hump day. All right, and then you're going to be able to get exclusive access to tell us what you want us to talk about and give us feedback on all the topics from every podcast. But hey, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay with us. We'll see you next time here in the Man Cave.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Any real man would follow us on Patreon for exclusive content and prizes at patreon.com/The Man Cave Podcast. The Man Cave. No safe spaces, no bullshit.